All right.
Perfect.
Totally perfect. Extremely crisp, Chris. And what
We only do this for us because nobody is watching at that very moment. So
nobody is watching at that moment, but if anyone rewatches any of our first like 10 seconds,
it's true.
it's a treat. It's a treat for them when they rewatch on Facebook or YouTube. Hello to our YouTube friends watching. All right, fantastic. Well, I like to get on Facebook and make sure I'm watching the comments. We're watching both sets of comments, but I like to watch it on my phone as well. I like to dive in and give some comments while the reading is happening. So, you know, yeah. We like to ping people a little early. We get started officially at 7, but if you join early at 6:55, you get to enjoy all of our silliness.
These are like the extras. These are like, on a DVD. Yeah, the behind the scenes stuff.
Exactly. Exactly, Chris. Well,
Being
what is this fabulous local beer that you're drinking tonight, Chris?
Well, I've had this one before, and I do enjoy it. It's called Black Hog
Oh,
IPA.
oh, fabulous.
This is I always forget where it's from. Oh, it's from Oxford, Connecticut. Black
Ah,
Black Hog Brewing Company, and they
very
do they do a thing where they maybe they ordered too many cans for one of their beers, so then they put a the Black Hog IPA sticker over the
really?
so it's like it's kind of weird, but
Oh,
hey,
so they're like, we
you
had
know,
more of this can, but
we ran out of cans for this one thing, but we have some lying around,
well,
and things like that.
sustainability.
Hey, they're a small operation, and it's tasty beer. It's tasty.
It, very nice. I love the mason jar. Love it.
Mm. Sounds good. That's very good.
Fabulous. We have some of our friends coming in. We've got Philip J. Curtis coming in, J.L.
Hola.
Myers, Dare Fuller, Delano, our friend
Wow.
Delano.
And there's
Mom
Mom
and Dad.
watching us on the big screen.
Yeah, they
Oh,
are. And that's one thing that's great about having YouTube now, just such ease of viewing on your smart TV. So subscribe, hit that notification bell on YouTube,
yeah.
and you could watch us on the big screen anytime.
You're gonna have to
Uh,
start doing some 3D on the big screen.
we obviously have to, Oh, cheers, Chris! Clink. I am drinking a wine called Harvest Time from Jin's Family Farms or Jin's Winery in Shelton. Cheers.
Mom says we look great on YouTube.
Why, thanks, Mom.
There must be some kind of special filter for me that makes me look good.
Oh, Delano. Okay. Delano. I'm so sorry. But you are our friend. I will learn how to pronounce it, I promise. We should have a call.
I just like the name Dare. What a great name is that?
I know, how perfect is that?
That's a really
Last week we had F. Scott service, F. Scott, right?
yeah.
Amazing. Having the first name Dare, it's, already that's a great first
Great
impression.
writer's name.
It's a perfect writer's name. Well, Chris, we have another fabulous reading tonight with two wonderful writers who have also written together, which is so cool. And I'm excited to ask them about that. In our Q&A time, we have Kim Magowan and Michelle Ross. It's FUMFA 38 tonight. And that is wild, Chris, isn't it?
Amazing.
Amazing indeed. Chris, before we get into reading the bios of our readers for tonight, Kim McGowan and Michelle Ross, tell us about what we have coming up.
We got some very cool stuff coming up. We have, for instance, next week, our friend JLC Myers
Woo!
is going to be sharing a portion of a screenplay.
First time on FUMFA Live.
That's the first on FUMFA Live, and particularly with featuring several people who will be portraying the various roles. They
Yeah.
include our friend Bill Patrick, as well as Carrie Davies, Michelle Miller, Shelley Evans, Joe Linhart. I'm going to have a small role.
Get excited, people.
That's right. I think it's a nude scene. So
Oh, God.
I think people should tune in. And also reading will be Julie Kane.
Yes.
Some poems.
Fabulous poet, Julie Kane.
Yep. So we're excited about that. The next week we have Lone Lee, who's got a new YA book coming out. We have Nicole Caruso Garcia, another poet. That's our Super Bowl special.
Yep.
So we're going to encourage people to set aside the Super Bowl for maybe this year.
About an hour and a half.
Super Bowl is boring, so just watch us. It's much more exciting. And then on Valentine's Day, we have Romance Night with Meredith Kaiser, and we have special guests.
Mm-hmm.
Open mic. So if anybody out there has a romantically themed poem or story, even an essay, something on the brief side, let us know. Get in touch, and we will have you on our open mic portion of that show. And then we have all kinds of stuff down the line. It's exciting.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chris. So I hope you're all excited and that you have us on your calendar for basically every Sunday night, 7 to 8:30. We've got fabulous feature readers and special theme nights, open mics, and more great stuff to come. But now let's read the bios of our readers for tonight. Chris, can you read for us Kim McGowan's bio?
Absolutely can. Kim McGowan lives in San Francisco, and she teaches in the Department of Literatures and Languages at Mills College. So she's joining us from that West Coast. Her short story collection, Undoing, which I have right here, won the 2017 Moon City Press Fiction Award. Her novel, The Light Source, was published by 713 Books. Her fiction has been published in many, 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 many places, including Booth, Craft, the Gettysburg Review, Hobart, Smoke Long Quarterly, Wigleaf, and many, many others. Her stories have been selected for Best Small Fictions and Wigleaf's Top 50. She's editor-in-chief and fiction editor of Pithead Chapel. Check that out online. And her website is kimmcgowan.com. You can find her on Twitter at Kim McGowan. And very excited to have Kim on.
Absolutely. And let me read to you about Michelle Ross. I should note that this is a double fiction night, if you didn't remember us announcing that last week. It's all fiction night. Very exciting.
All fiction.
Oh, all right. Michelle Ross is the author of the story collections There's So Much They Haven't Told You, winner of the 2016 Moon City Short Fiction Award, and Shapeshifting, winner of the 2020 Stillhouse Press Short Fiction Award, and forthcoming in 2021. Her fiction has appeared or is forthcoming in Alaska Quarterly Review, Colorado Review, Electric Literature, Smoke Long Quarterly, Witness, and other venues. Her work is included in Best Microfiction 2020 and the Wigleaf Top 50 2019, among other anthologies. She is fiction editor of Atticus Review and was a consulting editor for the 2018 Best Small Fictions anthology. You can learn even more and check out her books at michellenross.com. So exciting. All right, Chris. So we're going to have a special format tonight. First, we're going to have Kim McGowan reading solo. Then we'll have Michelle Ross reading solo. And then they're going to read a piece that they wrote together. So enjoy.
Oh,
Welcome, Kim.
sorry, I'm startled.
I'm
Thank
so
you so
sorry.
much, Katie and Chris. I saw my face pop up all of a sudden. Thank you so much for having me. So I'm going to read first a very, very short micro. This is really new. It just came out in Passages North last week. The title is almost longer than the story.
Awesome. Kim, we'll leave you to it. Thank you so much.
Okay. So this micro is called A Handbook for Identifying Bird Calls. I've changed my ex-husband's contact info to asshole, but still, when Jake calls, I feel a lurch in my chest that makes me understand why apothecaries and poets once believed that emotions reside in the heart. He's sitting on his deck, Jake explains, drinking a beer, listening to the damnedest bird. I've never heard anything like it, he says. What kind of bird makes it sound like a can opener? It's a ridiculous thing to feel victorious about, I know. But it makes me happy that he'd call me instead of Googling it or asking Christy, his dumb, gorgeous wife. Here, listen, he says. And I listen, picturing Jake holding his cell phone up towards the sky, the sunlight catching all the fine hairs of his extended arm. And then the next story I'm going to read is in my Undoing book. And hopefully, I forgot how tiny the type is. Hopefully I can read it from the book. Might have to switch to my big print version. This story is called Squirrel Beach. Squirrel Beach. Katrine used to be fun, but ever since she got sober, she's as boring as the rest of them. Now it's my sponsor this, my sponsor that. Now family get-togethers are that much more of a fork in my eye. Before she became the queen of AA, Katrine and I used to hang out on Squirrel Beach, watching the kids splash around the lake. We drank the fancy microbrews that Seth, Katrine's husband, and my obnoxious brother bought at Whole Foods, and we made fun of all the ways my parents' house sucked. Starting with, weren't beaches supposed to be sandy, actually pleasurable to lie on? Not all rocks, so that even when we brought Mom's soft, fluffy towels, the ones that were absolutely not for the beach, so we had to sneak them down. It was like lying on piles of acorns or the skulls of vertebrates. That was Katrine's theory, that it was called Squirrel Beach because it was some ceremonial small beast burial ground. She used to make me laugh, Katrine. Even when we were talking about serious shit, like the fact that she had fallen for the new teacher at her school. Katrine taught math and science. Victor taught humanities. I forecasted the whole thing. We sat on the beach, watching Katrine's Ronnie push around my Claire, haul Claire by the elbow, and try to get her to swim to the buoy. And Katrine went on and on about the new teacher. The fact that she was telling me such boring shit was what made me pay attention. Victor bought his own coffee because he didn't like the coffee they stocked in the faculty lounge. She thought that was interesting, or worth telling for some reason, that it signified something exceptional about him, some way he rose above the crowd. Honestly, I thought he sounded pretentious and kind of like Seth with his precious microbrews. I wondered what it said about Katrine that she fell for such particular guys. Maybe it made her feel good about herself, that someone choosy would pick her. Anyway, I saw the whole thing coming from Coffee Snob on set. Katrine and I lay on our stomachs, Katrine wearing her giant Scarlett O'Hara hat, and talked. I felt a little bad for Seth, but I looked forward to those Saturdays too, to finding out what happened next. When Katrine told me about Victor getting her a blue coffee mug with a gold fleur-de-lis, I said, "You know he wants to sleep with you." She shook her head and laughed. "They were just friends," she said. "And besides, he was married." I could have said, "So are you," but I didn't. Because Katrine reminded me of my friend Claire Pedorowski from when I was 16. We spent that summer lying on a beach talking about boys. The summer Claire, the prettiest girl in my class, lost her virginity to this boy, Scott. I heard every contour of that romance too. The way he kissed the hollow of her neck, the way the tip of his penis reminded Claire of the silky cap of a mushroom. We were close that summer, though not when school started again. But that summer, I watched Claire braid and re-braid her hair, and I listened to her talk. You expect 29 to feel different from 16, but it doesn't really. I was intrigued and envious just like back then, because you try being a single mother and having any kind of a sex life. Every weekend, I heard another chapter, from Victor making her coffee, to buying Katrine her own blue mug, to drinks after work, to first kiss, to the hotel room where Victor made her come twice. Katrine alternated between giddiness and suffering, just like Claire. Well, Katrine's suffering was worse. She fell hard for Victor, and it was clear to me that there was no future there. She asked, "Should I leave, Seth?" I looked at her beautiful, bloodshot eyes, and I thought about what a dick Seth had been when we were kids. When Seth found out, Katrine lost it. I heard this part from Seth, not Katrine, how she wrung her hands like someone praying, how she kept saying, "What can I do? What can I do?" And according to Seth, what followed was like a job negotiation, the kind you have when you're ready to quit, so you ask for the moon to see what they will give you. "Quit drinking," he told her. But then Seth looked off to the distance. We were sitting on Squirrel Beach again, me and Seth. My ass was hurting because we were on some ratty towel that might as well have been a dishcloth. Seth wouldn't sneak out Mom's fluffy towels. He followed her rules. After a pause, Seth staring at the steel-colored lake, he explained that this never would have happened without Katrine drinking. She never would have kissed Victor if she hadn't kicked back 2 Jack Daniels. He didn't mention me at all. He never asked me if I knew or why I didn't tell him. But he looked down at my hand, at the can I was holding. I knew he was picturing me and Katrine on the beach, lying on our stomachs, whispering, our heads together, her wearing that wide-brimmed hat. So that was a year ago. Katrine got her sobriety chip last week. I saw her show it to my sister, Melissa. Melissa said, "Good for you." Now I'm the only one on Squirrel Beach drinking, and it's cans of Miller Lite. Seth doesn't bring fancy beer because he's supporting Katrine. Everyone is supporting Katrine. and Katrine keeps her distance from me. I don't know if it's because of the can in my hand or because I heard every chapter of her story and never told her to stop. Sometimes it's just me on Squirrel Beach, watching Claire paddle around with Ronnie. I see how long-legged Claire is getting. She's 8 now. I watch her swim further and farther out. All I ever wanted was someone who would always love me. Yesterday, Melissa sat next to me watching the kids. Her 2 are at sleepaway camp. I said to her what I'd been thinking. Missy, no one warns you how hard it is to be a single parent. She said, I tried, Liz. I tried to warn you. But she didn't tell me to call her Melissa, which is what she has said since she went to college and reinvented herself. Then she tapped my beer can and said, maybe you should let up on that. But she said it gently and not in her bitchy, superior way. We watched the kids swim towards the buoy, their arms white scissor blades shearing the water. That's it. So, cheers.
Cheers! Kim, that was such a beautiful and powerful story. I really, really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. And so, since you can't hear the applause at home, and you'll have to go later and read all the comments people were sharing, and we'll talk about your awesome pieces in our Q&A. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. And welcome, Michelle.
Hi.
Hi. All right. We're excited to hear you read, and we'll leave you to it.
Thank you for having me. Like Kim, I'm going to read one little tiny micro first and then a little bit longer story. This microfiction is called Mirrors. The house I was born in had 2 mirrors, one in the bathroom and one in the living room. The mirror in the living room was the length of the wall on which it hung. Etched in black on the mirror surface were mountains and forests of imposing pines. Between the mountains, there was a valley, and in that valley, a lake. When I looked in that mirror, I was imprinted on this landscape. The mirror in the bathroom was etched with water spots and toothpaste. In that mirror, my face was just my face. The living room mirror was lit by the sun, which threw a slab of hard yellow light onto the carpet below. The bathroom mirror was lit by 4 bulbs mounted in a line, bleached skulls. The living room mirror reflected our bookshelves, a set of encyclopedias, a farmer's almanac, a Guinness Book of World Records, faux leather-bound novels with gold-edged pages, 2 small abstract paintings Dad did before I was born, the colors dark and velvety, a moss-colored vase in which turkey feathers were arranged like flowers. The bathroom mirror reflected frayed towels draped over the shower rod, a needlepoint Mom had done of a lone palm drooping coconuts, the crooked lid hamper that barely concealed our dirty laundry. Back then, I thought of the living room mirror as belonging to Dad and the bathroom mirror as belonging to Mom. But it was Mom who polished both mirrors each Saturday morning with wadded up newspaper that stained her hands, while miles away, Dad crept through the tall brush, stalking his prey. All right, and this is a slightly longer story that's from my forthcoming story collection, Shapeshifting. And you'll see that Kim and I picked a similar theme tonight. This is called The Difference Between Me and Everyone Else. I'm refilling my plastic cup with ginger ale in the hostess's kitchen when a woman, the mother of the naked toddler with the obscenely long penis, says to another woman, I've been in 3 fatal car accidents. She could have stepped out of a Dorothea Lange photograph, both hearty and soft at once. I'll call her Biscuit. The second woman says, "What do you mean fatal?" She's more like an opera cake, intricate and linear. Biscuit says lethal, deadly. With her free hand, she makes a slicing motion across the front of her throat. Opera cake says, "Your fault?" I almost knock over a bottle of Malbec as I set the ginger ale back onto the counter. I catch the bottle just in time. Opera cake says, "A spilled bottle of wine is a criminal act where I come from." I laugh nervously. The bottle is still in my hand, and I want to put it to my lips. Just a taste. What my toddler Jack says of every dessert within a 10-foot radius. He can sniff out sugar as well as a bloodhound tracks the scent of rotting flesh. It's innate in humans, this sensitivity to sugar. I fall asleep on the floor of Jack's bedroom on the mornings he wakes before 5 a.m., and I wake again to find him burrowed like a rodent beneath my shirt, binging on breast milk. That's me with liquor. Though before I went all in on alcohol, I once trapped cannoli and eclairs. When my friend Jeannie and I traveled Europe by train in college, we made it a point to sample at least one pastry and at least one boy in every city we visited. But since the DUI and my court-mandated AA, I'm drinking ginger ale. Biscuit says, "No, not my fault. The first time was when I was a kid. Some maniac was driving the wrong way on the highway at night. My dad swerved just enough that we got sideswiped, but the other guy crashed into the median at like 90 miles an hour. His car contracted like a slinky." Opera cake says, "Whoa." Biscuit's naked toddler enters the kitchen then and asks for more apple juice. Biscuit says, "You're cut off." I try not to stare at his penis, which dangles like opera cake's oversized earrings as she laughs. "Juice," he repeats. "Water," Biscuit says. He drops the empty cup on the tile and stomps out of the kitchen. "I did that once when Will said I'd had enough wine," Opera Cake says. This was at his mother's house. I mean, is there such a thing as enough wine in that circumstance? The glass was hand-painted, colorful shards all over the kitchen, like the entrails of a piñata. Of course, he covered for me. Didn't want his mom thinking he'd married a raging alcoholic. She and Biscuit laugh. I don't make a sound. My friend Jeannie says it could have happened to anybody, that the state's no-tolerance DUI law is ridiculous. I mean, a 0.05 blood alcohol level, that's like a single drink. You weren't drunk. You didn't hurt anyone. Jack wasn't in the car. Who hasn't driven after having a drink or two? But Jeannie doesn't have a kid. She and I got drunk on margaritas one night when Jack was about 5 months old. And he cried when I handed him a bottle of untainted breast milk from the fridge. Kept grabbing at my chest. I cried too. Jeannie didn't understand why I was upset. Biscuit picks up the cup and puts it in the sink. I actually sort of like my mother-in-law, but only for about an hour at a time. I consider pouring out the ginger ale and filling my cup with Malbec. Biscuit and Opera Cake are both drinking wine, and one glass is not a big deal as long as I wash it down with water before leaving the party. But then I think of Jack, playing in the kiddie pool out back in his clothes. He's modest, even in front of his grandparents. Although his modesty can't possibly have anything to do with his penis, not at his age, I worry about his penis. It's stubby, like a pencil eraser. Maybe it's normal. Or maybe I did that to him, drinking all that chocolate soy milk when I was pregnant. I was so proud of myself for not drinking more than a few sips of alcohol for 9 whole months. I didn't learn until my last month of pregnancy that soy mimics estrogen, that it can decrease the size of male sexual organs in utero. Scientists are constantly discovering new mistakes it's too late to undo. Biscuit says, So fatal accident number 2 happened when I was in high school. I left a party at like 1 a.m. with some guy I just met to go buy donuts. She looks back and forth at both me and Opera Cake. 1 minute he's driving, the next we're on the side of the road, and I see that a tree limb has punctured the windshield and punched through the guy's skull like a fist. Oh my God, Opera Cake says. How did he crash? I don't know, Biscuit says. I blacked out. Opera Cake says, remind me to never get into a car with you. Biscuit shrugs. I don't believe in curses. Jack enters the kitchen then. His clothes are soaked. He's dripping on the floor. Mama, I'm cold, he says. Biscuit is quick. Before I can think to put my ginger ale down, she's opened a drawer and has wrapped my child's shoulders in a red kitchen towel. He looks like he may fall asleep standing. She says, we need to get you out of those wet clothes. She tugs at his shirt. I've got it, I say. Biscuit looks slightly startled. Then she smiles. Sorry, she says. I go into mother mode, you know? Sure, I say quietly. Come here, Jack, I say. And he seems to look at me for a long second, as though he's reluctant to leave Biscuit's more capable hands. I lead Jack to the bathroom, where I undress him and towel him off with a clean bath towel from the hostess's linen closet. The smell of his skin reminds me of the aftermath of rainstorms when I was a kid. I spent hours collecting the animals that surfaced after heavy rains, frogs and crawdads and worms. Once, a baby bird whose nest fell to the earth. My mother said the bird's wing was broken. Then she said that because I'd handled the bird, the mother wouldn't come back for it. I thought I'd rescued the animal, but it turned out that my human scent, something I couldn't smell, had as good as marked that bird for death. Years later, when I told my friend Jeannie that story, she said, that's a myth. Your scent didn't kill that bird. The parents abandoned it because they knew there was nothing they could do to save it. I wrap Jack in the towel like a burrito. When I return to the kitchen, Jack in my arms, Opera Cake is saying, oh my God, oh my God. She throws her hand up over her mouth. On the drive home, I eye my sleeping child through the rear view mirror, his head slumped against his shoulder at what seems like an impossible angle, and I shiver. Whatever story Biscuit told, I think it can't be as bad as the terrible things I imagine. Jeannie says the difference between me and everyone else is that I got caught. But there's so much Jeannie doesn't know. Like that time she and I got drunk on margaritas on my back porch, Jack developed a severe diaper rash because I spent the next morning vomiting into the toilet while my baby cried and cried from his crib. Like how once I bought wine from the grocery store on the way to pick up Jack from daycare after work. It was a 2-serving carton and I barely drank a quarter of it before retrieving him from the nursery floor, where he was flipping through a board book of smiling human faces. But that evening, while he nursed, he studied me intently, as he always did when he nursed, and I thought about something I'd read, how newborns can distinguish their mother's milk from other mother's milk by scent alone. I wondered what chemical markers Jack could smell on me, that he could taste. I don't mean the wine exactly. I mean how an animal knows an odor is human. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Fantastic. Wow, that's great. These stories, they go so well together, yours and Kim. Did you plan that ahead of time?
Kinda accidentally.
I want to talk later in the Q&A about how to do that, how to choose the story. We're going to bring Kim back. Now you guys are going to read a story that you wrote together. So This is a first for us. It's going to be fun. And take it away.
Okay. This is called Kindness Woman. Kindness Woman has been working here barely 7 months, and already we hate her. This hate is of a different flavor than the antagonism we feel for Faye, who takes so many damn smoke breaks over the course of a day that even her emails reek of cigarettes. Emails that often include full sentences in all caps, sentences that bend and break with her scorn, like the cigarette stubs she twists and grinds into a tin coffee can behind the building. Kindness Woman's brand of obnoxiousness sits on the opposite end of the spectrum as Faye's. Her emails contain rainbows, each sentence a different color and a different font. Her emails invite us to help ourselves to the cake or brownies or homemade cranberry walnut unicorn bread that she has baked for our enjoyment on this beautiful day.
Her emails always end with the word enjoy as a command.
As if that isn't enough, some days she will walk around the building hawking a platter of brownies or a jar of lollipops. She stops at every desk. She says, "A brownie to make your morning sweet?" Or "A lollipop to brighten your afternoon?" The price? Only your dignity and having to endure her self-satisfied grin. Kindness Woman won't just anonymously leave her baked goods in the kitchen like everyone else around here who wants to kill us slowly with sugar. Kindness Woman wants credit for her kindnesses. She wants applause.
The thing about her is she never matured from high school, says Terry, who works in HR and maintains that HR will turn the sweetest, most extroverted person into a misanthrope, so it's not her fault she hates the world. She's still on the hunt for senior superlatives.
Cheeriest demeanor, most spirited.
Most likely to fill up your email with exclamation points, I say. Terry and I exchange a meaningful glance.
Exclamation points are to us the splinters of punctuation marks. We share a deep disdain for those rows and rows of exclamation points in Kindness Woman's emails, stiff and spiky, like the barbed hooks of a stickabur.
We share a disdain, frankly, for enthusiasm. Sometimes the only words Terry and I will exchange over the course of the day are "shoot me now." And yet, and I'm being completely sincere here, we communicate so much with those 3 words. Depending on where the emphasis is laid, "shoot me now" means seriously, it's my turn to moan. "Shoot me now" conveys urgency. This level of bullshit is surpassingly dire.
Now, Terry says these words and she emphasizes all 3. Her use of emphasis is so extreme, it brings to mind Kindness Woman's exclamation points. But I don't point this out to Terry. Kindness Woman is the reason for this bloated, bloodshot, shoot me now. Because Kindness Woman filed a complaint to HR against Faye for being mean to her. There's a form for meanest complaints, I say. Terry squints at me. Then she says, "And who do you think Pamela tasked with the joyous assignment of investigating this complaint?" What's an investigation entail exactly, I say? Do you tap their phones? Because we're talking in the break room, we both eye the door constantly. Why doesn't anyone file a complaint against Chad, is what Terry says. Hard to prove a man is consciously looking at your breast every time he talks to you, I say. Could be like being cross-eyed. He could say he can't control his eyes. Terry sighs. She says, "For starters, I have to talk to these women. I have to sit down at a table and have a conversation with the 2 most intolerable women in this lunatic asylum of an office. I have to get their sides of the story. I have to take their complaints seriously."
Don't take this the wrong way, but I'm kind of envious. I want to be a fly on the wall. Maybe you could record your interviews. Just surreptitiously turn your phone face down. I'd love to hear Faye explain why she's mean to Kindness Woman. What do you predict? Because she's fucking annoying? Terry does not crack a smile. She folds her arms over her chest and looks at me bleakly. Do you know why I got into HR? She says. I thought I could do some good in the world. I thought I could have some kind of influence on, say, diversity of hires, on practices of inclusivity, bringing in good people, and, okay, slapping the bad people, because dudes like Chad deserve to have their lives made uncomfortable. But no one utters a peep about Chad. Instead, I get complaints along the lines of, Faye said, get those blondies out of my face. I do not give a shit if they have butterscotch chips. Terry bites her lip, then passes her hand across my forehead. Obliviate, you didn't hear me say that. Terry is always doing this, letting confidential things slip and then wiping my memory clean. I let my tongue hang out and glaze my eyes in response, performing successful memory eradication. But there's no cheering Terry up today. I think I finally hit bottom, she says. I think this is the bottom of the goddamn well. The ninth circle of hell, here I am, getting chewed on by fucking Satan. Here's what I don't get, I say. Isn't this against Kindness Woman's whole ethos? Isn't lodging an official complaint pretty much the antithesis of kind?
Terry looks at me pityingly. She says, isn't our company motto all for one and one for all? Yet you remember how Pamela said to Julie when she found Julie using Isaac's office when Isaac was on vacation, you're not on an office level pay grade. And then Julie came to me about it. Me, my little cubicle 5 feet outside of Pamela's office. All I could do was laugh until my face hurt. I said to her, Julie, when the president of the company is also the director of HR and your complaint is about said president, what do you expect me, who is also not office level pay grade, to do about it? Pamela enters the break room then, so I quickly switch the subject. I say, yeah, I started buying the generic sparkling waters. They taste the same, but they're nearly half the price. Which flavor, Terry says. We try to look like we're not monitoring Pamela out of the corners of our eyes as she slices a chunk of Kindness Woman's latest will you please be my friend bribe. Something crumbly and weirdly white, like it just might be made entirely of sugar. That or cocaine. Lemon, I say, though the coconut is pretty good too. Normally, I take pride in my ability to quickly come up with inane shit to talk about in Pamela's presence. But right now, for some reason, I feel this sickening sadness, a lost every tooth in your mouth kind of sadness.
And that's when I remembered that I had this weird dream last night that I was excruciatingly depressed. Weird because normally I dream out of this world shit. But a dream about being depressed is dreadfully of this world. In the dream, I was walking very slowly through a putty-colored landscape. I was on my way to buy Cascade liquid powder combination dishwashing capsules. My shoulders were slumped. When I first woke, it wasn't immediately clear to me that I had been dreaming or was now conscious, or what, if anything, distinguished the two states. I actually said out loud, wait, what? And rolled over to my left. But of course, there was no Carl lying next to me. Anything wrong, Grace? Pamela says. She's watching me narrowly with her bulbous eyes. I was just remembering this incredibly boring dream I had, I said. People say they have interesting dreams. And when they describe them, they're incredibly boring. I wonder if that would make a description of an incredibly boring dream interesting? Or would it just be that much more boring? Pamela's affect is so flat and deadpan that it's impossible to distinguish between her philosophical observations and her jokes. Terry takes a gamble and laughs, and Pamela smiles graciously, so we know Terry guessed right. It's you, I think.
Oh, is it? Well, I'll leave you two to your dreams and sparkling water, Pamela says, and departs holding aloft her powdery square of kindness pastry.
Terry raises her eyebrows. Now I know how to get Pamela to make a fucking fast exit. That was even speedier than when Sam starts telling stories about the latest accomplishments of her twins. She looks at me more closely. Hey, what's up with you? You look like someone hit you with a hammer. There are a lot of things I could say at this point, but what I latch on to is what I woke up thinking, what made me so sad. My reflection in the bathroom mirror shimmered and blurred. I miss Carl.
Terry looks at me, just looks at me, then nods. I'm pretty sure I know what Terry's thinking, but not saying. That I was the one who pushed for the separation. That I said Carl lacked the introspection to really love someone. We hadn't yet separated when Kindness Woman first showed up. And I told Carl about that woman's damn emails and her peddling her treats around the office. And he said, "You sound like that Faye woman. It's like you're allergic to kindness. It's like you want to be miserable." I tried to explain to Carl that that's the thing. It's not kindness if you're constantly begging for credit for your actions, and if you're pissed off when people don't give you the thanks you believe you've earned. I said, maybe she believes she's being kind, but that's not kindness. It's phoniness. I'd talked before that point about us separating. I'd already said many times that I didn't believe he really loved me. I'd said to him that I believed he loved me, but that I didn't feel genuinely loved because I was constantly having to ask him to be thoughtful towards me, and that on the rare occasions he was thoughtful, he made a big fuss about wanting me to praise him. When I called Kindness Woman phony and manipulative, that was the turning point for Carl. That's when he said, "You know what? I think you're right. We should separate because you're impossible to please." That's when I thought, shit, he really doesn't love me.
Shoot me now, I say. Terry, who passed me Kleenex 6 months ago and said, "But Grace, isn't the point that you didn't really love him either?" Nods again, turns her fingers into a gun, and takes aim.
I'm standing there waiting for that too slow, invisible bullet to pierce my heart when Kindness Woman enters the kitchen. She looks at Terry, then she turns around and leaves, as though she can't remember what it is she'd wanted. Thank you.
So good.
That was so much fun. That was so much fun seeing you do that. It was like a performance.
It really was. Wasn't that so good? I'm still absorbing it. It's so powerful, but like at the same time in such an ordinary scene that was so beautifully written and so perfectly read. Thank you so much. Applause with everyone at home.
Perfectly read, except for the glitch that we can't always remember who wrote what. After that.
Oh, yeah,
How long ago was that written?
How long ago? I think maybe 2 years.
I'd say a year and a half, maybe a little over a year. Yeah.
Right. So, well, it would be hard, right? I mean, that's part of what's so fascinating about this collaborative process too, is right. It's like it's like a chemistry experiment or something. You pour something in, and then you pour something in, and then you create this whole other thing, and then I'm sure the lines are blurred as to who wrote what or yeah, what, but
And we also like revise, we change words in each other's sentences. So I think that's where we really get most confused, of where
right, right.
Like,
Who
this
wrote it?
sentence sounds like your sentence now.
right.
Well,
That's
since it's fresh in our mind, and we're really thinking about this, I would, and since our audience is still writing in their questions, so make sure you're writing your questions in, everyone. I would just love to ask you, what was your process, as Chris was saying, for this particular piece? What was maybe the initial inspiration? How did you get together? How did you write it together? Did you just sort of pass it back and forth, like, I wrote this much, you take it from here, or was there a whole outline and plan?
There's never an outline and plan. I mean, Michelle started this one, and you can tell because Michelle was reading everything that she wrote, and I was reading everything that I wrote or mostly wrote. So she'll start something, write a paragraph or two, email it to me. I write a little bit more, email it back to her. We don't have rules.
I love that. But what was so amazing about it too is that it was so seamless. And of course, I think that comes also in the editing process to kind of make it feel like it's one, very complete story with the same tone and,
yeah.
And good. Yeah, and it's working together as cohesion. But that's such an awesome process, and that must have been a lot of fun. How long did it take to complete, and how did you connect as writer friends / friends in real life? Follow-up question.
You wanted to take one?
Yeah, sure. So we met on Crazy Sixfold. That's when we met Chris as well. Or actually, Kim and Chris had met before that. But anyways, that's where I met both of them. And that was like in 2014 or 15. I can't remember.
14, December. Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I don't know. We just kind of hit it off and started sending each other everything we wrote. And so I think that, that probably has something to do with why we're able to collaborate so well. We're already really comfortable reading each other's work, giving feedback, and probably know each other's work so well that it's kind of weirdly easy to blend.
I love that.
Michelle's my first reader. So as soon as I write a draft of a story, I'll send it to Michelle, and she gives me comments, and I take most of them.
I love that. I think that's such a beautiful connection.
It is. It's a real lesson in the importance of reaching out, because
yes,
Kim reached out to me because we had both been in this short story contest, and she's like, oh, I liked your story, and it just started this whole email relationship, and then the same thing happened with Michelle, and it's just like, there's so many of us out here.
That's right.
Just lost in space half the time. It's really nice to have
now so isolated.
Yeah. It's especially now. But anyway, you guys have like a whole collection of collaborative stories. I know I've read a whole bunch of them, and but it works both ways, right? Sometimes you start them, Kim, and pass it on them, right? And I can say the ones that I've read, which is, you have like a whole book. I don't know why that book's not published yet. But,
right.
You would never know that there were two people writing these stories. It feels like it came from one, really smart, talented brain.
Right.
Well, for me, part of what's so fascinating about it is Chris has read both of our books, but I don't think most people would confuse our writing with the other person. I don't think we're that stylistically similar. I think people that like Michelle's writing tend to like mine, not always, but tend to. But I really don't think we sound that much alike. So it's
Interesting.
funny how when we do these collaborations,
They're so
our
perfect.
voices really do blend.
Yeah.
Well, maybe
It's hard
if,
for us to tell sometimes who wrote what.
yeah.
Right.
If you wrote very similarly style wise, it might not work. You know, it's just sort of like relationships. You know, if you're too much alike, it can be a disaster. So that can help.
I love it. I think this is so cool, and this also reminds me of, you know, kind of we have so many people in our wonderful online community, people from our MFA program, you know, from Fairfield University, and people beyond that. And you know, anytime writers get together and they form these bonds together, you know, what Chris said about the beauty of reaching out and building these friendships, where you know you have this friend who becomes your first reader or your mentor or your co-writer, and you carry those relationships forward. That's just such a beautiful and exciting thing, because so often writing is, you know, kind of so lonely, and especially these days. So it's so nice to have you guys here.
We have a
Yes,
question.
no, I
question.
so strongly agree with that, Katie. I really can't. I mean, I don't want to sound too mushy here, but the
Go for
difference
it. I love it.
that meeting Michelle has made in my writing life, I really can't. It's hard to even articulate. I mean, when we met each other in 2014, I mean, met online because we didn't meet in real life for over a year.
Well,
I think we both had 7 stories published in 2014.
wow.
And now, you know, I know you've published over 100.
That's incredible.
No, you guys are. It kind of depresses me, frankly, because we're looking on Facebook, because you guys are constantly.
You're on fire.
Constantly
Be proud of your
being
friends.
published. I'm reading this going, what is wrong with me? Anyway, here's a question from
Chris.
Lee T. Just about this process. Were you nervous that trying to write together would bring up sticky dynamics?
I don't think
No.
so. I mean, it's hard to when we first started doing this, I think was it the summer of 2016? Is that right?
2017.
Oh, 2017.
Yeah.
So it's a little hard to remember the very beginning, but I don't think we were very nervous about it. I mean, at that point we were already so comfortable, you know. It's always been easy. I mean, there's never really been an awkward moment.
Yeah. Do you think
That's
the distance
wonderful.
helps with that? You know, you're not in the same state.
No, California, Arizona.
Yeah.
I think the impetus for it was Sundog was doing a collaboration contest.
Okay.
So we just decided to give it a try, and then it was a lot of fun.
Cool.
And it was also really fast, which
Right.
you know bears emphasizing, because my usual MO as a writer is not that fast. And
right. For some
when
reason,
we're writing together, we can really jam.
I love that. This is inspiring to me about the collaborative writing. I've heard about these instances here and there where it's been so fruitful and so exciting, and just kind of this wonderful writer friendship. And you know, I have to participate in that more. I would like to give that a try.
That's right.
I would say that it takes a lot of trust. I mean, you have to find the right person, and I just, you know, I completely trust Kim's instinct. So I never really worried that she was going to do something terrible to the story. You know, I'm like, whatever she does, it's going to be good. So
it's going to be good wherever it goes. Yeah.
And you have to be able to say, I mean, I don't know how much this happens with you guys. Maybe it never happens, but you know, like, okay, that part doesn't work. We need to go in a different direction, which is very vulnerable for writers.
I mean, once in a while, maybe, but like we mostly just kind of goes. I don't know why.
And that's
I'm
so
sometimes more impatient than Michelle, which is, I think, my writing flaw generally is I hate revising and I get sick of something, so I just want to be done with it. So occasionally I'll be like, "It's done, right?" And Rachel's like, "No." And then or you have to put in a 8th grade dance.
That's one of the ways we're completely different is that the first draft is the hardest thing for me, but I love revising. So
yeah.
There you go. See, you're a good match.
You got a good yin and yang going on here in terms of
that's true. I did not know that was true for you, though, Michelle. That's interesting that you like revising, because I really hate revising, and it is my flaw as a writer that I hate revising.
We have a question.
I tend to write polished first drafts and then want to be done with it.
Right.
Perfect combo.
From Katie's mom.
Mom!
Did you personally know a kindness woman?
Yes. This is very much inspired by real people in my office. So hopefully none of them are watching.
Yeah.
I felt a little called out. I'm definitely a heavy exclamation point. But I don't try to get love only with baked goods, and definitely not only in the oven. No, I'm just kidding. That was so good. And then how it came together at the end with the relationship, where it's just like, no, this woman isn't really kind. It's sort of like this compulsion to be like praised or to be seen. It's sort of manipulative in a way, you know, like it's nice when people are happy and colorful and exclamation points and all that, and it's good when things are genuine, but when you kind of sense that feeling of like, well, this is not necessarily genuine, and you know, it's almost like this compulsive like people pleasing sort of thing, and you know, it's sort of these like deeper, like more intricate layers, and that's very interesting to me. But more from you guys about like these people who are these kindness women, and how you kind of really centered on that idea in this story.
I actually was thinking, because I was looking at our book manuscript recently, how a lot of the stories in that book are about friends and frenemies. And I wonder if that's because we're doing this together, or, you know, it's something. I mean, I think I call them my mortal enemy stories, and Michelle calls them her nemesis stories, but we do write about enemies individually. But have you noticed that, Michelle, how it comes up quite a bit, these kind of toxic friendships?
Right, yeah. Right. I think so.
And one thing that surprised me about the kindness woman story is I didn't see that end coming necessarily. I mean, I thought it was a funny story, and then all of a sudden it takes this quite sad turn, and it surprised me when that happened.
But I think that is a lot of the fun of collaborating, is that, you know, you don't have control over the story. You only have control over those few paragraphs, and then you have to surrender and be willing to go where it goes next. And so there's there's constant surprise, because, you know, pretty much never does Kim write what I would have written, right? So, yeah.
I love that. This is so cool. I'm very excited about collaborative writing now, and it's so cool to hear about your relationship and how this works so beautifully. We've got a few more questions, Chris.
I know. Well, before we move on from this particular story, JLC Myers wants to know if you got the recipe for the unicorn bread.
I'm dying to know.
That was you. I'd never even heard of unicorn bread. What is unicorn bread?
I just made it up.
I know. I was like, I've never heard of that, but if that really exists, my daughter is going to go crazy. But anyway, same person, JLC Myers asks, what continues to inspire you to write during, I assume she means these tumultuous times. You know, you guys are very, very prolific. So, you know, where do these things come from? And
Well, it's definitely been harder this past year, for me, and I think I keep hearing that from everybody. I mean, up until 2020, I pretty routinely wrote every single morning. And
Wow.
then the last year, it's been much more sporadic. I mean, I'd get up in the morning and just start reading the news. And then I'd, keep reading the news. And
Yeah.
Terrible.
it's been
Yeah. Then you have to take a nap because you're so tired from reading the news.
That
Right.
sounds like pretty
I've
good.
never been as consistent as Michelle. I basically, when the semester is on, it's hard for me to get writing done, except for Flash, which is why I started writing flash fiction in the first place, because that was the only kind of writing I could reliably do when I was teaching.
Right.
But I try and be really productive during the summer and the winter. And when lockdown first happened, which was early in San Francisco, it was March 12th, everything shut down.
Yeah.
The only kind of stories I could write at first were COVID stories, which of course no one's going to want to read. And I knew that. I mean, I'm an editor. I know no one wants to read these stories, including me, but it felt like the only thing I could cough up.
That makes
it felt like
sense.
terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe in a few years you could bring them out.
Oh, there are going to be COVID anthologies.
People will be, but they'll be historical.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah. So let me see. We got another from Francine. When you write together, do you try to stick to where you think the other writer wants to go, or do you enjoy veering off?
That's a great question.
I enjoy veering off.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, yeah.
I see it like improv is what it feels like to me. I don't know if any of you have done any improvisation, but that, you just have to wing it, and someone, is all of a sudden improving that their hands have turned into sandwiches and you're just head in that direction.
You gotta go with it.
Part of why I love the collaborations, because I feel like as a writer, another of my writer flaws are I'm too narrow. I write about the same kind of core island material all the time. And when I'm working on these things with Michelle, they go in strange directions that I never would have put into one of my own stories.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
it's to different places.
It's hard for me to think of a concrete example right now, but I definitely, especially on longer stories we've worked on together, sometimes I can tell Kim's trying to go there, and I'm like, nope. I'm going to turn it in the other direction. But I was just thinking about two cattail maze. Like in the story that we just read, I mean, as you can see, we're both writing both characters, right? It's all just one thing. And that's how most of the stories we've written are. But there's one story we wrote, This Is Cruel, where there's two point of views and it goes back and forth.
Nice.
In that one, it really was that I took one character and Kim took one character. And we didn't really exactly plan it that way, but that's just kind of how it went. And that was a lot of fun because they were like boring characters, and
Terry and brother and a sister who were, at loggerheads the whole time. So that was fun because we could insult each other.
You think you could do a novel?
I don't know. That might be the only way I could ever write a novel is if I wrote it with you, Kim.
Do it.
I don't know, honestly, if I'll ever try and write a novel again. I mean, so again, I said this already, but I hate revising. And a novel is all about revising, right? I mean, that for me was such a painful process of trying to fix this thing.
So good though.
That makes me think of another question. How did each of you individually, kind of on your own, come to writing, and how did short fiction really become your genre? Kim,
I know that when I went to grad school, I think at the time I thought that I was going to write novels because that's mostly what I had read up until that point. I mean,
right.
I mean, short stories in creative writing classes, but before
Sure.
that, I wasn't really much of a short story reader, to be
Right.
honest. And then it was like, oh, I have to write in this form that is totally new. And I found it really hard at first. But then eventually, I don't know, I guess I fell in love with it. And now I can't imagine writing a novel. That sounds like crazy. But I mean, and especially having written flash fiction so much in the last, I don't know, however many years, which still can take me a long time. I don't mean to make it sound like it's easy. There are flash fictions I've worked on off and on for years at a time before I finish them.
Sure.
But like they suddenly make a 20-page short story seem like a novel. Like that feels really
right.
excellent. So I mean, it takes me forever to write a short story that's longer. I mean, I love it, but
though it's what you've been doing lately is writing these longer stories. Whereas I've gotten myself more and more in a flash fiction corner that I need to break out of. I need to try longer stuff again. I think flash fiction really appeals to the perfectionist in me.
I get it.
I mean, I had a very different path from Michelle. I never got an MFA. I got a PhD instead, and I'm a literature professor, not a creative writing professor. So for something like 20 years, my creative writing was really sidelined. And it's only been in the last 10 years where I've gotten serious about trying to make writing. I'm not as good as Michelle, not a daily practice, but a habitual practice.
You publish quite a lot. That's nothing to be shy about.
Do you know when you start a story, do you know, okay, this is going to be flash fiction? Because, maybe it's just a time element. Okay, I have, this amount of time, so this is definitely going to be flash fiction. But is that always the case? Like, if you sometimes begin something that's going to be, you think is going to be flash fiction and ends up being 20, 25 pages or vice versa?
I'd say occasionally, but rarely. I mean, my process for flash is to try and get the whole draft down in one sitting and then revise at leisure, but see the whole shape of a story. So give myself 3 or 4 hours to bang out a draft. And occasionally that does happen to me, Chris, where I think, a story is going to be much longer. And then after 800 or 900 words, I realize, no, actually, that's it.
That's it.
I've come to the ending and I think, does it need anything else? No. I mean, maybe this is me being lazy again. But what about one long one? And we knew it was going to be long right at the beginning. That 8,000 word story.
Right. And I think mostly for me, it's kind of a frame of mind. I usually know what I'm starting lengthwise. I don't really know what's going to happen, but I'm just like, I'm going to write a long story now, or I mean, occasionally it doesn't work out that way, but most of the time it is kind of intentional. Kim, are you saying that? I know you say you always like write a full draft of flash fiction in one go, and I do occasionally, but I have to say, again, I'm so horrible at writing first drafts. It's like teeth. It's like miserable for me. So it's like I just, even with flash fiction, I'll write a couple of paragraphs and I totally abandon it, for weeks at a time. And And yeah, I mean, she knows, like, I'll send her a draft of something, and then like it'll sit around for another 8 months, and I might only change one word in that time before I finally get it.
She's bad about abandoning stuff.
This is
I will say
interesting
that.
to me because I wonder, like, if if you've ever analyzed that, because there's inspiration to write it, and you are writing it, but I wonder, what is it in that process? Is it like a procrastination, or like a fear of it needs to be perfect when I get it out the first time, or I have it here, but it's so hard to get it on the page? What do you think it is? It's interesting.
I think
I'm sure people struggle with this.
I mean, I hear other people talk about how they know how stories are going to end, or they kind of have a gist of what story they're writing.
Right.
I don't really operate that way. I just kind of sit down and start writing something.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's my problem, is I really have no idea why I set out to write this particular story or where it's going. And so sometimes that works out fine and it just goes, but sometimes it's just like, I don't know what I'm doing with this. Let me put it aside. And then I guess maybe I am thinking about it in the back of my head. And
very interesting. That's very interesting. We have a question here from JLC Myers. And so JLC Myers is from our MFA program, and she's asking if you were from our MFA program. And actually, no, they are not. They're both special guests tonight. And you're out, Michelle, you're out in Arizona, and Kim, you're in California. And remind us, how did you initially meet again and become fabulous writer, collaborator friends? What was the first meeting? In AWP, I believe?
In person?
In real life.
In real life?
At AWP.
In real life, yeah.
Yeah. But before that, it was through, I mean, Chris mentioned it, but so shout out to Sixfold, which is...
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
Very strange. I mean, I don't know whether... Yeah, I'm going to recommend it. I'm going to commit to recommending it because you will meet people like Chris and Michelle doing it. But what this is a $5 to enter the Sixfold contest, and you read 3 rounds of 6 stories each. So a total of 18 stories, or I guess if you're in the poetry contest, 18 poems. And then with each round, you rank them 1 through 6. And
that's
you
cool.
can leave comments. You don't have to. I always thought initially you had to, and I'm a rule follower, so I always left comments, but you don't have to. And the first time I did it in 2014, one of my 18 stories was Michelle's, which is an amazing story. It's in her book, Cinema Verite. And I loved it. And I wrote her lots of comments.
I love this.
And I gave you an email address, right? So after she won, so this is another experience I have with Michelle, one of my best friends in the world. I hate competing with her. Anyway, she won that contest. And ever since then, we've been corresponding, right? And sending each other drafts. So that was 2014. And then we first met in real life at the AWP in 2016, which was in LA, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we were roommates.
I love it.
Blind date.
Nice.
But by then we were already good friends.
That is so great. This is such like a, such a great shout out to like writer pals and friends and collaborators, of which, like, in this community, we're all connected and, in a similar kind of way. And it's so cool to see what you've been able to create together, and, such a great writing relationship and friendship.
Would you guys recommend Sixfold too, Chris and Michelle? I mean, in an ambivalent way, but
well,
yeah, right?
I mean, it's fun doing it together, but I mean, that's part of the reason I even emailed Kim back, is like the vast majority of the comments I got were so mean and crazy. that, you know, then I got Kim's comments. I was like, oh my God, she's like smart and, and thoughtful.
Yeah, that's the thing. You know, I've done it, but and not even read the comments sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you were recommending to us last
I
time.
don't want to go there, but sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But I think, you know, the fact that Michelle won shows that it can work. You know,
And Chris was second prize and third prize.
yeah, I won third, and then I won second. That's the next time I went. It's like, okay, this is it. I'm going to win the whole thing. I think that's when Michelle.
Your story was the best story by far. That second place story. But anyway, it's all subjective.
But I mean, it's a good experience to I mean, it's sort of a workshop-y type experience because you know, you read all these stories, and it's true, you don't have to comment, but you know, you're thinking about them. And like, okay, why is this one first and this one second, or, you know, third, fourth, or whatever? I mean, you have to really put a lot of thought into it. Sometimes it's very easy. You know, it's like, well, I know that one's sixth. Sometimes it's hard. It's like, you know, that fifth or sixth, it's hard. Which one is worse? But then there's sometimes it's like, well, which one is better? You know, and it's just a good exercise for writers.
It sounds mean, but like, so, you know, I'll have my little piece of paper and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so sometimes it's like the first story I read, I'm like, oh, that's sixth. And then that's why I'm like, oh, never mind, scratch that out.
Never mind.
Yeah. That happens.
I want to participate in this. I'm fascinated. It sounds like fun for poetry. The poetry.
And then you wait.
In a rubbernecking kind of way, it is fun. And one of my students actually was second prize in the poetry.
Wow.
That's
coming out of undergrad program at Mills. So
amazing.
And it, you know, it lasts. You know, it lasts for weeks and weeks. It's like this thing. It's like you know, it goes on forever. It seems, and then it's like at midnight on Sunday, you're going to find out the winner.
That's great. Well, you know, I think we have the perfect amount of time left, Chris, to do our famous last double question with Kim and Michelle. Would you like to explain the double question, Chris? Okay.
Two-parter. First part is we call pearls of wisdom. What's your pearl of wisdom for writers emerging, struggling to get out there, just as a writer, that pearl of wisdom. And then part two is just give us a reading recommendations, maybe something you've read recently, maybe it's something you read 20 years ago that you can't forget, just something that excites you. So Kim, you start.
Pearl of wisdom. So this is for emerging writers.
Yeah, you know, yeah, people,
well,
you know, youngsters, the upstarts.
I mean, you all know this already, but what has made a difference for me as a writer is getting to be a lot more chill about rejection. And for many years, my you know, I'm just bad about rejection. I'm badly wired that way. And my fear of rejection kept me from submitting stories altogether. I mean, for a long time, I didn't really get serious about sending stuff out until I was 43. So one thing I would just say is both a writer and an editor is you have to, comfortable isn't the right word, but you have to sort of deal with the fact that as a writer, you're going to get a lot of rejections, and it's subjective and you cannot take it personally, and you have to have the confidence to keep, you know, submitting and moving forward and not get too daunted by that process. I mean, in the first 4 years I was sending out stories, I had 4 stories accepted. 4 stories in 4 years, you know, is very demoralizing. So that's one thing I would say. And what was the other thing, Chris? A recommendation?
A book recommendation, other than Michelle's.
Right, obviously.
I mean, this is an older book, but and I feel like maybe everyone has read it by this point. But Jenny Offal's Department of Speculation is the book I wish I'd written. I love that novel so much. So if anyone is out there who still hasn't read Department of Speculation, it's like
Chris has it. He's getting it.
yeah. So Chris can back me up here, but it's such a great book. It's like a novel in micros. That's how I describe it.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, you can see just these.
Yeah, lots of white space, and my students loved it too.
Thanks,
I
Kim.
was looking at that recently and saying, "Oh, I should read that again." It's one of those that really invites multiple readings.
Nice.
So, Michelle, Pearl of Wisdom.
I'm going to go with patience. And I mean, and especially, well, and all kinds of different uses of the word. I mean, one, in submitting stuff. I mean, I think while on one hand, you don't want to be so afraid of rejection that you never submit something, on the other hand, you also want to have patience to make sure that what you're submitting is something you really love and that you're proud of. And it's so easy to get impatient and send something out before it's ready, which, you know, I still do from time to time. I just jump on something and I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have sent that, you know.
I know that feeling.
It's like the beer goggles, you know, like you write something.
Terrible feeling. It's like, oh, why?
It needs some time. It needs to sit for a minute, and then you need to see it with fresh eyes and then judge.
Yeah, and I think, and then ask yourself, I mean, I think it does get tricky because there are certainly pieces that I've been, especially riskier pieces that I feel uncertain about. And yet I do think I was right to submit them, and then they get accepted, and you know, I'm happy I submitted them. But then there are other pieces you're uncertain about in a different kind of way, and trying to distinguish between those different feelings of uncertainty.
Right.
Takes maybe some practice. A book. I'm going to, you know, actually, I was just recently talking with some friends about Catherine Dunn's Geek Love.
Oh,
I love that book so much. If you have you all read it or no?
I read it. I read it a long time ago.
Yeah.
And, you know, when it first came out, and yeah, that's a unique and fun read. Yeah.
It's such a If you don't know about it, it's about a carnival, you know, circus family of freaks.
Yeah.
And then just I don't know, it's hard to even like talk about it. But it's so like such a great story. I mean, the characters are so well developed and the conflicts, and it's a family story too.
I love it.
That's one I should go back to because it's been a long time.
Yeah,
I'd like to read
that's a classic.
Yeah.
Nice.
Great recommendation.
Yeah, those are fabulous recommendations. And we would just like to thank you both again. Thank you, Kim Magowan and Michelle Ross, for reading with us tonight, your fabulous individual pieces and also your collaborative piece. It was such a treat to have you both as special guests. So an extra applause for you. Yeah.
Well, thank you for having us, you two. It was a lot of fun.
It was.
Thank you. It's been a blast.
It really has been a blast. And, Chris and I talk every week that, that there's always some kind of, serendipitous synergy or commonality between the writers. And just tonight, it's like from the beginning, you're already friends, but it was so great to talk about the collaborative writing and that whole process. It was such a treat. And so thanks to you and to our awesome audience for joining us. If you're a new person watching, come back every Sunday, just about every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern. And we're on Facebook and YouTube. So thank you very much, ladies. Thanks, Chris. And everybody have a good night.
See you next week.